Good evening. This is Community Unity Now, the D Tycoon Show. This is Bill Morton, my co-host, president of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. I am Trudy Leong, administrator of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. Our very special guest today is Jahari Stamps. His stage name is Jahari the Hippie, and he is sitting chair of SHARP, Southside Health Advocacy Resource Partnership. Good evening, Jahari. How are you today?
Good evening, Trudy. I feel amazing to be alive. How about yourself?
Awesome. We are so glad to have you with us. So you are the grandson of the late civil rights activist Marion Stamps. What did Sister
Correct.
Marion teach you?
Wow. What she taught me, what she instilled in me at a very young age, a sense of community, a sense of compassion and empathy for people, a sense of connection to the struggle and the plight of growing up in this world as a person of color. She instilled in me the value and the importance of being village raised, which means that collective action and anything that you're doing is important for the success of an individual, that it takes an all hands on deck approach. Um, I watched her selflessly give up herself up until the day that she died for the service of other people. And I absolutely have that spirit as it pertains to my particular community as well. So those are things that I know that she kind of gifted to me.
Mm. And please tell us how about SHARP, Southside Health Advocacy Resource Partnership, and how Sister Marion Stamps affected your work in SHARP.
So SHARP was established in 1995. Initially, the work dealt with marginalized communities on the South Side as a response to the HIV and AIDS epidemic. So we're talking Black men who have sex with men, and queer, lesbian, bisexual, and trans-identified individuals that were living on the South Side impacted by AIDS and HIV, and it's just a way to connect them to and link them to resources. Um, I came into contact with SHARP the first time 2015, 2016, while it was still under the control of Thomas Sampson, who is a mentor of mine. And then my activity within the organization really gained wings under its current sitting chair. I'm actually the chair elect as it stands. The sitting chair is Noel Green. He's a mentor. He's also the director of outreach at the Center for HIV Elimination. And I came under his mentorship through a internship with the Center for HIV Elimination, and then that kind of amplified my activities within SHARP. And it was because of the things that I had always been exposed to community outreach work from birth. My grandmother was a civil rights activist in the Cabrini-Green area. Um, she had her own youth center that I was a part of, that my mom and my uncles were a part of. So a sense of community, a sense of help and answering the call and the need of people have always been something that resonated very deeply with me. So as I began to take that work into my community with my activity in SHARP, that always rung really loudly with me, was just to watch herself just kind of put what her needs and wants at the back burner to really kind of answer the call to people who really don't have a lot of options and have a lot of answers. And that work has transformed from a focus on HIV and AIDS to a lot of the things that plague not just LGBT and queer people, but Black and brown people on the South Side. There is a cataclysm of issues that affect us, and that has been our focus. And the way that she inspires that is me just thinking less about myself and more about of what it is that my people need, and me being able to be in a position to deliver those needs to them the best way that I can.
What kind of cataclysmic issues are we talking about?
So I mean, we're 2023. You know, we just got outside of a global pandemic. We and during that pandemic, we saw um, a renaissance of the civil rights movement kind of happen with the unfortunate um, violence that was happening against Black bodies at the hands of police officers. Um, HIV and AIDS is still rising in transmission amongst Black males and Black cis women, as well as trans and bisexual identified individuals, people who are impacted by homelessness, people who are impacted by unaddressed mental illness, who may not have a lot of conflict resolution skills, individuals who are without jobs, um, gun violence that transpires in a lot of urban neighborhoods. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm. What is the mission of SHARP?
Initially the mission of SHARP was to bring awareness to the issue of HIV and AIDS and to provide a pathway for individuals who needed to get in care, seek treatment, albeit we not being able to provide it to them, help them navigate to a space where they could get the care that they need. The mission now is about the increasing of the quality of life of the individual. So vocational programs, innovative implementation of programming, social media interaction. We have a mental health intervention that we're currently doing. At the same time, still fully engaged in the HIV and AIDS fight, because we have these conversations around getting to zero, and now we're seeing that marginalized populations don't just mean Black same gender loving individuals and people of trans experience, but also cis Black women and people who engage in high risk situations. So our focus is completely on individuals on the Southside that are Black and brown.
Your grandmother, Marion Stamps, did a historic voter registration drive and got a lot of people to help vote for Mayor Harold Washington. Is there any work in SHARP that is also reflected of that? Are you doing voter registration drives to help improve the lives, to help the Black and brown community have more of a voice in the community?
So I myself am going through the process with another bona fide civic organization to actually become a registrar, so that I'm able to go into our spaces and directly engage our community in voter registration and actually have a familiar face that's right there, able to give them the information and give them the option to register to vote if they aren't. SHARP necessarily cannot participate in political process, but me as an individual, Jahari Stamps, I have been heavily engaged with kind of mobilizing the Black queer community to be more involved with the mayoral race that is happening in Chicago right now. So I'm very, very proud and excited about that, and the work that I've been able to do with Brandon Johnson's campaign as an individual, but not with SHARP. But I guess it's a twofold thing that kind of live in the same thing. So not on the SHARP side, but with me being the chair-elect of the organization, the activities that I do as an individual absolutely reflects inside of the organization as well.
As a voter registrar that you're doing personally, are you seeing any resistance in your community? Your Old Town and Cabrini-Green, born and raised. Is there any mistrust of the government? Any kind of sentiment that your vote doesn't count or elections are rigged?
Absolutely. I think that is a message that is propagandized in the media. I think that there's a certain level of accountability that we as people of color have to take by not being fully involved and engaged in the election process and in legislative processes. Historically, those systems have been oppressive to Black and brown bodies, so there is an understanding of why that mistrust exists. But having candidates and legislation reflect the populations that they serve, I think is really, really important. And having the people that are engaging these populations going out into the field and trying to get people more involved in those processes is important. At the same time, you're talking to an individual who identifies as a gay male, and you very rarely see politicians come into our spaces and try to get us involved in the legislative process. So as I'm going and I'm having these conversations around asking individuals, have they voted or are they registered to vote? And they tell me no, and I ask them why, and their answer is literally because nobody's ever asked me. And then that itself is a bigger conversation, but I'm just glad that I can be a source of change, if not to try to sway anybody to vote one way or another, but just to use your right to vote.
And your vote is your voice. When I was trying to go get out the vote during early voting on Howard Street, there was one guy in particular. He come by walking by every single day, and he'd say politicians are all crooks. Have you gotten that one? And if you were to be encountered with that, how would you respond to try to
Um,
get somebody
I'm
to
sorry.
register to vote?
Well, of course, there because again, the mistrust is there for a reason. We cannot deny the systemic oppression and racism that Black and brown people have experienced in this country. I mean, we came over here on ships against our own will, but with that, the way that I combat that is that for every bad thing that is thrown at me, there's a good thing. You know what I mean? I let them know that the reason why these stores are being able to be zoned in this neighborhood are a direct result of the politicians that are elected into the seats. The reason why certain programs and initiatives are funded is because somebody's at the seat making those types of decisions. And then I always just kind of end on, well, we don't have the right to complain about what is not happening if we are not being active in our own change.
Mhm. You are also a musical artist and have
Right.
headlined, and your stage name is Jahari the Hippie. How does your art contribute to Sharp again, this Southside Health Advocacy Resource Partnership?
Yes. So currently, we have implemented we have doing an intervention that is using creative expression as an intervention for mental illness.
Mhm.
So what happens is that we bring people into a space to have a therapeutic experience using art and sonic sound to see how people enter a space versus how they leave a space. Listen to the testimonials of individuals using their stories and how they have been able to persevere through certain situations and how they have used music and performative art as a coping mechanism for that. And then in hearing those stories, for the people who are in the room to it, in the atmosphere to experience it, has it added anything or changed their minds about therapeutic processes? Did they leave different than how they entered the room? And also understanding that in order to receive music from a metaphysical level, music is of a higher frequency. So in order to receive it, you have to lift your frequency up even to be able to hear it. So in doing that, if your mood is down a little bit, it lifts up automatically once the music or the sonic comes on because you have to be of a heightened frequency to receive it in the first place.
So, what is sonic healing?
So sonic healing is using music and sound and testimonials as a therapeutic mechanism in an environment of individuals who are marginalized.
Well, recently, Bill and I have been talking about how the purring of cats is said to be healing for people, as well as
Hmm.
for cats. So, is there a frequency in sonic healing that is especially conducive to healing?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can think of it, just make it personal. When you feeling bad, you can turn on a song that'll make you feel great. If you need to have a good cry, I'm sure that there's a song in the catalog or in the library that you can go to right now that can invoke and bring out that emotion out of you. So absolutely it can heal you. Music just makes people feel good, and it's a universal language that doesn't have the barrier um of one particular language. It's easily translatable, everybody understands it, and when that beat hits you, you feel good. It makes you feel something, even if it's not good, if it's bad or indifferent. So if you're going in there if you're listening to it or engaging with it with the intention to heal, then healing can absolutely be found sonically.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Is it when you're the people that you're trying to help? If you talk about what happened to them, and then you combine that with music, do they also write music, or do they tell you that there's a song that particularly they're attuned to, and then you put the words and the music together? What happens?
So the music, I mean, the part that I feel like people connected with is that I have this theory that we are all of a human experience walking around in our own brokenness, and I believe that trauma is one of those other things that kind of bonds us all together. So you have individuals who come from communities where seeking traditional therapy is not a part of our natural makeup, because there's also medical mistrust on top of political mistrust. So it's just not common within our community to go and seek traditional therapy. Yet we do know and understand that everybody is going through something and trying to find ways to process through them. So in providing an atmosphere with sonic healing, you have artists and individuals who are speaking to their direct traumas, and then also lending to the fact that because they did not have a way to process them traditionally, they leaned into an art form to help them cope and process, and through it, it helped heal them. And in hearing that as an audience member, you, number one, you connect to the traumatic experience, because I don't think that trauma is relative to one particular person. If we're in a room with 100 people and we talk about domestic violence, there's probably 40 or 50% of the individuals who may have experienced it on some level, if not even more. So to hear someone speak to that vulnerability, um, and then take you to a place where they were able to create something good out of it, there's a direct connection on both ends right there. And that is what we're trying to accomplish, is bonding with each other through our traumatic experiences and allowing one person's way of coping and healing hopefully provide an outlet of heal to another individual, while also offering traditional therapeutic services within the space as well. We have mental health professionals, holistic health professionals, massage therapists, exercise, and people who exercise all across the board that are engaging in this process and that are available without necessarily trying to push their particular skill set onto people, but letting them know that it is there available to them. So if I walk into a space and I may have um, a preconceived notion about therapy, but then I have this experience of sonic healing with individuals in a room where everybody is connecting with what they're hearing and what they're experiencing together. And then you have a mental health associate, or a psychologist, a psychiatrist in a room saying, hey, I'm here if anybody needs me. Because of the experience I just had, it might make me a bit more susceptible to engage in a process like that.
Mhm.
So you've got this cataclysm of issues that are affecting people in your community and in the city of Chicago, and you've got all of these different people trying to help. How many people are actually involved in the Southside Health Advocacy Resources Partnership?
So we have a board of about 5 people, but we are, because Sharp initially started as a coalition of organizations on the South Side, we have help from um, so many different avenues. What I will say on this interview is that um, outside of myself, we have Noel Green, who is the current sitting chair. We have Thomas Sampson, who's an executive board member. We have Lake Daniel Washington, who's an executive board member. And we have um, Joel Jackson, who is Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the the University of Chicago. And I think I said earlier that Noel Green is the Outreach Director at the Center for HIV Elimination here in Chicago as well, and that's the executive board. Our biggest successes in collaboration has come from Randy Singer and Natasha Crooks, who are teachers at the University of Illinois at Chicago Department of Nursing. Um, so that has been a major shift in the work that we're doing through that collaboration and partnership with the UIC Department of Nursing, Dr. Randy Singer, Dr. Natasha Crooks in particular.
At UIC, do you have any musical therapists or therapists helping you as well? When I was at Wright College and at Northeastern Illinois University, I had classmates and friends who wanted to pursue music therapy.
Mm-hmm. So this work is expansive. That collaboration initially started as a research study with Black, cis, and trans women who participated in transactional sex work and how they were engaged in care. And then when COVID really hit, we implemented vaccine engagement into the house ballroom community. Um, and we have articles published, and I can talk about that later. But to answer your question, we're expounding on what that work looks like, incorporating UIC into the fold with sonic healing, because our work with them and our engagement with them has lied elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are a published research author. What did you research that had to do with Sharp?
So the first set of research that we conducted was how Black, cis, and trans women engaged in sexual health care that participated in transactional sex work. That article was published in the National Library of Public Health. And then we had a bunch of articles published by the American Health Journal, American Health Association Journal, another article published in the National Library of Public Health for our engagement with the house ballroom community and COVID vaccinations. We actually had a front page article on the Chicago Tribune published during Pride Month about our vaccine initiative. It was made into a really, really dope comic strip, and it was a front page feature on the Tribune during Pride Month.
What kind of vaccine initiative did you have?
COVID and monkeypox. And I know other people did initiatives with other vaccines, but Sharp and the University of Illinois at Chicago, Department of Nursing, i.e. Dr. Randy Singer, Dr. Natasha Crooks, and the executive board of Sharp were the first ones to implement COVID vaccines into the house ballroom community, which is marginalized individuals that participate in sub ballroom culture across the city of Chicago.
Okay. What are some of Sharp's? Well, you have mentioned a lot of their accomplishments. Are there any Sharp accomplishments that you want to mention that you haven't mentioned yet?
Well, we also, with our engagement with the house ballroom community, once a year, in November, we throw the New Directions Ball, where we have a panel discussion to discuss violence and trauma reduction within marginalized communities. We have a panel of people who are from the experience, with the moderator, of course, talk through things that they've experienced and come up with solutions that are culturally competent to the communities that we serve. And then we have a ball where we give away cash prizes for competition, completely free of ask. We were able to get a substantial amount of people tested for HIV and get engaged in care while at the ball. And we do that once a year in November. We have Sonic Healing happening as a once a month event that is going to turn into a program starting in about mid-April, early May. We also have a lot of collaboration that we do with V Pharmaceuticals, which is the only company in the world that medicine is strictly aimed at HIV prevention and intervention. And those are pretty much the things that we got on the table right now.
So with all of these different programs you have and all these things you're doing to help people, what kind of challenges do you face?
The big one is equity and funding process. Right now, even though Sharp has been around since 1995, if I'm being totally honest, the real work kind of happened once Noel Green took the seat, and it's continuing as he's mentoring me as I am in the seat, and just developing an organization that is traditionally like a grassroots organization, having funders believe in what it is that we are trying to accomplish, actually getting those outcomes and making it attractive so that people will continue to provide us with the resources to provide them to other people. It's easier to give big funding to a bigger organization that's been doing the work, but doesn't have the same results as this smaller organization that has amazing results but hasn't been doing the work as long. So I would just say that the biggest barrier, if there's any, is just equity and ownership within our own processes and investment in the smaller guy, but that won't always be the case. So I'm very forward thinking and progressive in that, but that has absolutely been something that we have to overcome. Not just ourselves, but any Black and brown CBO here in Chicago. We have a lot of Black dollars that are allocated to organizations that do not reflect the population that they serve, and then a lot of organizations that are in the mud that reflect the communities that they are providing service for are often overlooked because the bigger institutions have the budget and are more attractive on paper to the funders. So they'll give the bigger institutions the money, and then those institutions will subcontract us and disseminate that money how they please with us, instead of putting our own money into our own hands for our own people to do our own things.
Are you able to do any work with the city?
Yes, CDPH has given us some funding before, and we look forward to continuing working with them. CDPH is the Chicago Department of Public Health.
Funding?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was it funding for the COVID vaccine initiative, or was it for something else?
Some funding was for the COVID vaccine initiative, and the future funding will be for New Directions, which is in November, and Sonic Healing as it turns into a program in the spring.
How could people in which communities do you serve for our viewers that want to get involved, that need sonic healing and are interested in it? How would they? Who would you accept as a participant, and do they have to live nearby?
No, anybody who needs sonic healing can come into the atmosphere and experience it and get some. Because again, trauma has no race, no color, no age, no gender, no orientation, no anything. And music is the thing that speaks to the soul of all of us. So I don't think that I believe that is, sonic healing is 100% inclusive. Sharp's work is grounded on the South Side for Black and brown individuals, but anybody living on the South Side or anybody who needs help is welcome to come and engage in our processes.
If there are some other artists, let's say visual artists, but they still want to become involved in sonic healing, do you are they able to share their art as well?
Absolutely. So what happens with sonic healing is that it's not me by myself performing. I just kind of set the atmosphere and I kind of anchor the experience. But in between that, we have artists from the community actually come tell their story and perform. So absolutely, to answer your question.
Awesome. Okay, Jahari Stamps, thank you so much for joining us. Later, you please send us contact information for our description of the program so that our viewers could contact you for more information about SHARP. Thank you so much, Jahari Stamps, for joining us on Community Unity Now. This is Bill Morton. I am Trudy Leong, and this has been Community Unity Now, the D. Tycoon Show. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.